Hello, and welcome to another episode of Break the Cycle. Me, your host, Joshua Smith. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Monday night. Is it Monday night? I don't know. I always forget. You guys know how messed up I get with my days. I always forget what day it is because my work schedule is like rotating, and so I was off work today. I worked all weekend. I have to work tomorrow. It's just strange, and so I always forget what day it is. But I am working one more day, and then I'm leaving for Boston on Wednesday morning. So I'll be in Boston Wednesday through Sunday. This week. And so if you guys are in the Boston area, we have our quarterly Libertarian National Committee meeting there. As you know, I'm an at-large representative running to be vice chair of the Libertarian National Committee. And so I will be there for that, but also to hang out with all the cool New England area libertarians that I can meet up with. I know a lot of people are coming down from Delaware because we'll be discussing the Delaware situation. I know a lot of people from New Hampshire will be there. I'm sure some Connecticut libertarians. And then I have a 12-hour overnight layover in Baltimore on Sunday night when I leave. So I was talking to my good friend Otto, who lives there, and maybe having some Maryland and Virginia libertarians meet up there at the casino or something. I don't know, something stupid like that. But it's going to be fun. So definitely come and hang out if you can. Guys, we've got a great show for you tonight. Of course, let's start off with some sponsors. We got toplobster.com, the man, the myth, the legend, my good friend and partner on Break the Cycle, where you can get this great It Didn't Have to Be This Way Ron Paul hoodie that you see me wearing tonight by using BTC at checkout for a 10% discount. Or you can join the Patreon Subscribe Star or become a member of this here YouTube channel under all of my videos by hitting the join button, where you can get into the private Discord server and get all of Top Lobster's new gear up to 2 weeks before it goes to the general public at like a 30% discount. So really, really great stuff, man. Definitely go check it out if you can. And of course, executive producers of the show, anthemplanning.com, for all your emergency and crisis planning needs. Check them out today. See what they can do for your business, home, or personal life. They're doing a wonderful job that the government has historically sucked at, much cheaper and much more efficiently. Seriously, if you own a business, go check them out today. I promise you it's worth it. Guys, great show for you tonight. My guest tonight is a fellow at the Mises Institute. He's assistant professor of economics at Florida Southern College and a fellow of its Center for Free Enterprise. He is also the editor of Murray Rothbard's The Progressive Era back in 2017. He also transcribed Murray Rothbard's Lost fifth volume of Conceived in Liberty, The New Republic, and he has a new book out that we're going to talk about tonight, sir, Mr. Dr. Patrick Newman. Sir, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course, man. I always have a problem with the doctor thing. I mess it up every time. I call Tom. I'm friends with Tom Woods, and I've had Tom on the show. Mm-hmm. I've been on Tom's show 3 times, and I hung out with him in person. And I always, I forget he's a doctor, so I always start out Mr. Doctor, like every single time.
Yeah,
can't help it, man.
It's one of the last titles I guess we still have. So it's probably somewhere linked to the government, having an aristocratic title like doctor. I won't lie, that's the only reason why I got my PhD, just so, I could fill out the doctor forms instead of Mr. or Mrs. No, I say no, doctor right there, right? But it's all. Yeah, it's a useless title. It'll go away.
It's great. It's a great title, man. Because you now people have to trust you. I mean, it's just how, especially in today's age. I'll just be like, listen. No. You have to listen to what I'm saying about this because I'm a doctor. You know what I mean? It's really cool. I went to college. It's important.
Yeah.
Well, let's look. You're an author. Definitely a Mises fellow, economist. I mean, you do it all. But let's talk about your journey to Austrian economics and the Mises Institute. How did you get to where you are today, man?
Sure. So for a lot of like with a lot of people, it began with Ron Paul. So I was a senior in high school in 2008 during the financial crisis. That was back when I was living up in New Jersey, close to New York City. So a lot of people at my school, their family, their parents worked on Wall Street, et cetera, large financial firms. Anyway, I didn't know what was going on. It happened on the internet. I heard about this guy named Ron Paul, and I read his book, The Revolution, a Manifesto. And it was one of those life-changing moments. I still have the book. I still treasure it. That's the first book I've got out of all the books and all the stuff relating to Austrian economics, libertarianism, etc. At the back of the book, Ron Paul said, hey, if you want more, read this pamphlet, What Has Government Done to Our Money by Murray Rothbard. It's on this website called Mises.org. I'm like, what is Mises.org? And I found it. Of course, I quickly learned how to correctly pronounce the name. And since then, it's been all smooth sailing. I knew early on I wanted to get a PhD in economics, so I went, got my PhD, and since then, I've basically just been continuing to read and write about Austrian economics and research and present. But it really began with Ron Paul. And I'm actually going this weekend to see him speak in Houston at a Mises Institute event. I'm very fortunate to do that because it's a 10-year retrospective analysis of his whole End the Fed movement.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. And that's just such a great moment. It's actually hard for me to believe, talking with libertarians. And this was the libertarians who've got all involved in this. And this was after Ron Paul. I'm like, what? Like, there's now like the two groups. It's like, you on the Ron Paul? Are you after? When did you get into Ron Paul? Is it 2008, 2012, etc.? But for me, it was the fall of 2008. It was Ron Paul all the way.
Nice. Yeah, that's really for me too. I served in the military, and I was part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. I got out and I was super, super jaded on the military industrial complex, and saw Ron Paul speaking on TV in 2007. And that really, it felt like he was speaking right to me, you know what I mean? And then I worked on Ron Paul's campaign in 2008, actually in California. And then he actually endorsed me last year for chairman of the National Committee for the Libertarian Party. So it was the huge, this full circle thing where it's like, this is the man who brought me to liberty. Now he's endorsing me for chairman of a national political party. And it just blew my mind, man. I was just like, wow, I can't, you know what I mean? And anytime you get to see him speak is great. And I think in 2017 or 2018, I keynoted a ballroom right behind Ron Paul. Ron Paul was like the dinner speaker. And so I closed out the ballroom right before Ron Paul. And I thought that would be the pinnacle. And then getting endorsed by the guy, I mean, that just blew my mind, man. So you got a new book out, but before we start talking about the new book, let's talk about you transcribing Conceived in Liberty, the lost fifth edition. I mean, how did you come by that? I mean, how did that happen for you?
Yeah, so when I was at the Mises Institute, so I'm a fellow of the Mises Institute. I'm faculty. Before, I was a summer fellow, which meant you were a student. And I was started as an undergrad, but also when I was in graduate school, and you'd be there in the summer researching, et cetera. Anyway, so I started to do some work in the Rothbard archives. So this is the room in the Mises Institute where all of his files, right? Back in the day, you got to remember, he didn't have the internet. He didn't send text messages. He didn't send emails. He actually wrote a letter, right, on a typewriter, which is something that's incredible. It's really hard to believe now. So you have all those letters saved, et cetera, and also all of his manuscripts. And I was also doing some work organizing the archives because they were disorganized. Rothbard was a pack rat. He kept everything, but it wasn't always necessarily the most organized thing. And I had found the fifth volume of Conceived in Liberty, which other people had known about. The issue was he handwrote the whole thing. Don't need to get too much into the details of the project. It was a project on early American history. Right. Rothbard had written 4 volumes from Jamestown in 1607 through the American Revolutionary War. And there was always a 5th volume on the Constitution, the whole Constitutional Convention, the ratification, that was supposed to kind of be like the finale of the series. And the issue was he had handwrote it because the procedure he was working on using in the 60s was he would handwrite it, and then he would dictate it into a recording machine, and then someone would type it out. Again, you got to imagine this is the day when you had an old-fashioned typewriter. You didn't have, laptops and whatever. The issue was the Rothbard got involved with other projects. The research grant ran out. He never got around to basically finishing that 5th volume, so he only dictated it. No one ever typed it out. And the recording machine broke. So you're stuck with this 500-page thing of this handwritten Rothbard volume. So you might say, okay, no problem. Someone can easily just read it and type it up.
Somebody who's never seen Rothbard's handwriting.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The issue is that Rothbard's handwriting literally looks like it was from the 1780s, right. One of the founding fathers with all the big cursive and et cetera. And so no one could read it. In the 90s, his wife, Joey Rothbard, who died a couple years after him, she couldn't read it. Lou Rockwell couldn't read it. It was something that people just said, all right, well, we'll just kind of keep it there. Maybe someone will be able to work on it. That was me. I was able to basically transcribe it in the summer of 2018. And it sort of had like a Rosetta Stone, because he would quote some things. He would quote from the Constitutional Convention. I knew he was doing this, and I would be able to look it up online if I could figure out a couple words. And I did this to actually get like an alphabet. It was truly like a Rosetta Stone. You could see how he was writing certain words. And after a couple weeks, I got used to it. I could read his handwriting, and yeah, I translated it. So some people know a second language, Chinese or Spanish. Other people, they know Rothbardinese.
Yeah, dude.
I'm not. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I've seen some notes and stuff that he's written, and it was just like, what the? How did anybody read this shit? So reading that you translated that was a big thing for me. It definitely got a good laugh out of me, because a lot of people probably wouldn't understand, like, well, what's special about reading this guy's handwriting? But it's like really, really hard to read, like very hard.
Yeah.
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 How long did it take you?
So it took me to get the whole rough draft. It took me about 2.5 solid months in Auburn when I was there. And these were days I was clocking in. They were about 6.5-day work weeks, right? I mean, I was doing something I loved.
Sure.
And you're also, there wasn't a whole lot else. I mean, it's Auburn in the summer, so it's not like I was in, there's a lot of the opportunity cost. There wasn't a whole lot. I always loved being in the Rothbard archives as a kid in a candy store. It's just such a great place. So I was in there 6.5 days, 7 days a week in that summer, basically just translating it. And then you would do some minor editing just with grammar, or just like punctuation, etc. But yeah, that's where it. That's how I did it. It was a tough project. I sometimes look back and I say, how did I do that? But I mean, it was worth it. It felt very cool. It's hard to convey this feeling that so first of all, you obviously have to love Rothbard. You have to really be passionate about him and think he was such a good guy and everything. But when you're reading something that no one else has read of his before, in fact, he's the only person, right?
Right.
And so it's like you feel like you're translating something, right? And I remembered people back when I got involved in Austrian economics in like 2008. Some people would say, "Oh yeah, this Murray Rothbard, he wrote this Conceived in Liberty series, but there was this 5th volume. It never got published, right?" And so I was able to sort of go back and make that a contribution. I'm very, very happy about it, and I'm happy a lot of people read the book, and it's been very successful.
Yeah, you got like the real first edition, man.
Exactly.
The OG. No one had read it. No one had ever had a chance to before. That's pretty cool, man. Well, so that's just probably one of the coolest things I've ever heard, you know what I mean? And then to be able to do something like that, I mean, that's just got to be really, really cool. But you recently put out a book as well called Cronyism, Liberty versus Power in America, 1607 to 1849. Can you give us the rundown on that? What it seems, cronyism's a word that we use a lot as libertarians, and it's something that I try not to use as much anymore. And I noticed that you left the word capitalism out, which is probably you have a story as to why you did that as well. But let's talk about the book. What is the book about?
Sure. So the book is, as you mentioned, it's about cronyism. Okay. So first of all, what is cronyism? It's usually most of the time when politicians, they pass a law, they always say it's in the public interest, right? So you're pushing for central bank policy to increase GDP. You're pushing for a protective tariff to protect jobs, or you're pushing for face masks or lockdowns to keep the economy healthy, keep people healthy, et cetera, et cetera. Cronyism, I argue, or as everyone else does as well, it's actually a little, it's different, right? It's these special interest policies. So it's these government passes policies not to benefit the public, right? Instead, it's just to benefit special interests at the expense of the public.
Right.
And this is really the real motivation behind virtually all government policy, right? It's you have these insiders, they're lobbying for something, and they're able to reap rewards, get government favors, subsidies, discriminatory regulation, some sort of foreign policy maneuver, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. And this is going to benefit them. And of course, the American taxpayer is stuck with the bill, right? This is really the ultimate motivating factor behind government legislation. As libertarians, we argue that actually, when government passes policies, like the stimulus checks or the Paycheck Protection Program, it's not actually to benefit the public. There's always a hidden motivation there. And I focused on using the word cronyism rather than crony capitalism, because I think it's often an indictment. It's a subtle criticism of capitalism, or even if it's not intended, you're bringing capitalism in.
Sure.
Capitalism's the free market. Capitalism is the system of voluntary exchange. There's no government intervention, so there's no cronyism. The cronyism is really a separate system, right? Because you could have cronyism occurring with businesses lobbying for privileges. You could also have cronyism in a power-hungry bureaucrat or a very narcissistic politician, et cetera, who wants to increase his own power and whatever, and something with election laws, or something with a bureaucrat and the government policy and so on. So it's really it's separate from the capitalist system. So my book focuses on the history of cronyism in America. I try and show that actually a lot of major legislation was not to benefit the public, but it was always to benefit some insider. I was asked to write this book, and I was originally supposed to cover the entire history of America. I still want to do that. I basically decided, to just focus on early America for this and then proceed onwards, because it's really, there's a lot of cronyism in early America.
Yeah, it's woven into the fabric for sure.
Yeah, and I wanted to explain it to show that actually the battles between the anti-federalists and the federalists, the Jeffersonians and the Hamiltonians, the Democrats versus the Whigs, there is this battle of liberty versus power. People genuinely interested in decreasing cronyism versus people who want to increase cronyism. This is different than today, because back then you actually had these mass movement parties. Like, these guys could actually win office and they could actually pass policies, right? It's not a fringe third party or something like that. So it does deserve to sort of be analyzed separately. So that's the book. I go through cronyism in early America. I really just go through the historical record, looking at what politicians lobbied for what, how they benefited, who were people who were genuinely interested in reducing cronyism, how successful were they, and so on.
Nice. And that's obviously I know quite a bit about cronyism and what we've called crony capitalism for a long time. And I think one of the reasons why so many people use crony capitalism to begin with is because people are constantly pointing to our system of government saying, see, that's capitalism. And so, a lot of people that understood that that's not really capitalism kind of tried to take up that moniker so that they could point out that, like, okay, that might have some capitalistic undertones, but it's actually, this is what's going on. And so I think that's where that came from. I think cronyism is a much better way to just make it its own complete system and outside of capitalism. And really that's the smartest way to go about it as well. And, it's language is so important these days, right? Because people are constantly trying to redefine things. And when I had a conversation with Larry Sharp, who ran for governor of New York as a libertarian a couple years ago. And, he's surrounded by leftists, right? Everywhere he goes, it's the left, it's liberals. And I had a really good conversation with him because I was living in California at the time in the Bay Area. I had the same issues, and I always said the free market. And it's really, I appreciate saying the free market. I appreciate people who push for free market ideals, but it shuts down conversation immediately with anybody who's a little bit left of Austrian economics, right? And so he's like, look, just start calling it consumer-driven market. Because people, they empathize with that, right? But it's the same thing. It's just different language. And he's right. I mean, every time I've had a conversation with, leftists back home and my friends, and I started saying consumer driven, and they empathize with that because they know they're a consumer and they know that, they're trying to benefit. And so it's really this cool thing, man. Absolutely. I think it's great. But so you were approached to write this book? Is that what you said? Somebody asked you?
Yeah. So I was approached. So this man named Hunter Lewis, he's on the board of the Mises Institute. He's also a donor to the institute. He founded a prominent hedge fund back in the day, Cambridge Associates. So he approached me around when I was working on Conceived in Liberty. So I basically got done with the book completely in early 2019, Conceived in Liberty. He approached me. I honestly want to say November of 2018. So he approached me, provided me a research grant. So I started working on the book in about May of 2019, got done with it in about February of 2021. COVID was a huge help, right? Because if you're stuck inside, you can't do anything. Well, what are you going to do? You might as well read books and work on the project. So that was a big help. Yeah. So so that's sort of the origin of the book. I was approached to write it. And I've done a lot of work on history before. That's where a lot of my papers are, obviously with Rothbard stuff. So this is something I jumped at, right? Because I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah, Rothbard was my favorite historian.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. I love his stuff. Also, Tom Woods is really great with history too, man. I'm a big fan of Tom's history book. We let our kids read it and stuff. So, so give me a brief rundown of the history. So you wrote a whole book about this, but I want like the condensed, summarized version of the history of cronyism. How did it start? Who really pushed it into the fabric of America?
Mm-hmm. So cronyism, I describe cronyism. It sort of increased in these jagged phase, jagged process in early American history. It would go up, then it would kind of plateau a bit, and then it would go up again. And this is really the struggle between the forces of liberty and power. This is something that Rothbard described a lot. This actually came from Americans at the time. They always viewed themselves as this great battle between liberty and power. Cronyism, originally the colonies were created in a very crony fashion. Britain basically wanted them to be extensions of their empire. For a variety of reasons, we broke away. And then you had Americans who wanted to create a new empire of power. So guys like Robert Morris, who helped finance the war, Alexander Hamilton, etc., they were really pushing for this. Guys such as Patrick Henry, it's my favorite founding father, has nothing to do with the first name, I swear. Thomas Jefferson, etc., they were fighting against it. And as you go through the history, you'll see that actually in the 1790s, Hamilton was more or less calling all the shots. He had established this bank. He had established protective tariffs. He had assumed the debt. He had suppressed rebellions, taxpayer rebellions against taxes, the Whiskey Rebellion and the Freeze Rebellion. He had become Inspector General, and he was trying to actually get the United States in a full-on war with France so we could invade Louisiana, which is at the whole time, the western part of the United States and South America, etc. And really through the efforts of Jefferson and anti-federalists, etc., they were able to overthrow this, right? But what happened is power corrupts, right? This is a common theme. Any libertarian knows.
I want to go opening quote in your book there.
Yeah, by Lord Acton. I want to go to Washington. I'm going to reform the system, blah, blah, blah. What happens, though, is that give it a couple of years or a month, you get very cozy in the swamp, so to speak.
Right.
This happened with the Jeffersonians. You saw then a reaction against this by the Jacksonians in the 1820s. So Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren, Thomas Hart Benton, some of these old names people might not know, etc. And they actually, the Jacksonians are my favorite. I think they're the most successful libertarian movement in American history, potentially even overall history. They were actually able to accomplish a lot of reforms, right? And Jackson, he vetoed the bank. You always got to give him credit for that. Paid off the debt, etc. The issue, though, is that they got corrupted by power. They were incentivized to cronyism. The proximate cause, really, in both the Jeffersonians and the Jacksonians was land expansion. Jefferson he purchased Louisiana, and then he tried to get into a war with Great Britain so we could snatch Canada. Jackson and his supporters were involved in this huge issue over the annexation of Texas, which was an independent country at the time. And then we get into this huge war of conquest with Mexico, where we conquer California so we can have ports on the Pacific coast, so we can start to engage in various imperialist policies with China. So
and they're slowly conquering it back, Patrick.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's sort of the hopefully it was, I guess you could say it was a long elevator ride, right? So that's the elevator pitch kind of describing the book. I can, of course, go into more detail about various policies, but it really, when you think about the proximate crony people, it was it was Hamilton, it was a lot of Northern industrialists, and so on. And I think the Jeffersonians and the Jacksonians, they were dedicated libertarians. They weren't perfect.
Right.
They're way too criticized in the modern era, and I think that's just absolutely tragic.
Well, and I think that's
story.
by design. You know what I mean? I think the more powerful the U.S. government has gotten, the more they want you to think the people who fought, to free people here in the United States were the bad guys, and so anything they can use to downplay their mark on history, they definitely will.
Yeah, I mean, we actually now there's, I mean, this is literally related. This is a huge issue in the Virginia election. Teaching history to children and teaching history in the education system. And this is one of the reasons why the Republicans, very surprisingly, Youngkin, he won. And this is because it's how the changing history or revising it, people are getting upset. I mean, we're at the point where we almost teach students, when you and I, we went to school, it was, you learn about the American Revolution, right? I watched The Patriot when I was young.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You got Mel Gibson. You're like, all right, let's do this. We're the good guys. Britain's the bad guys. Now it's like Britain's the good guys. It's like, why do we even? America. The only reason we seceded was because of slavery,
right? Which is totally not false. True at all. Yeah,
incorrect. But it's like the whole American history is all it's just total, complete change, even from when I was in school and a kid in the 90s, and it's becoming more and more of an issue.
Right.
It's all tied in with all of the COVID policies, but history is important. If we don't learn from it, we're just doomed to repeat it.
Yeah,
the old saying.
And we are, and I mean we're seeing it happen on a crazy scale, and it's insane to me because it's like this is the information age. Like literally, you have a computer in your pocket at all times that you can look up anything in the world with, and people are more ignorant now than they were before these handheld computers that we carry around, and it's mind blowing to see the people be so ignorant of history and facts and laws, and it's just like you can literally Google these things right now and prove it to yourself, and you choose to stay this ignorant of things, and it is really crazy. And I just want to before any of the Lolberts come here and start freaking out, he was talking about the American Revolution, not the Civil War, when he said it wasn't about slavery. And I'm not saying I'm not saying either way whether the Civil War was about slavery or not. Mm-hmm. Some people think yes, some people think no. I don't have a really great opinion on that, so I won't talk about it. But the Revolutionary War definitely was not about slavery at all. Yeah. I mean, anybody who thinks it is has never picked up a book at all.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely an issue. One of the things I talk about in the book is actually slavery really wasn't a big issue in American history. It's sometimes be flare-ups, but the time when it became a big issue on the national level was over the annexation of Texas. Sure. In the mid 1840s. That's when it really became big. But yeah, now we're reading into the American Revolution. I think last week there was some statue in a prominent New York government building of Thomas Jefferson, and it got removed. The mayor is like, all right, yeah, well, we don't need this because he had he had slaves, right? Sure. And you're like, that. Well, first of all, people don't understand how slavery has actually been in this, been in the world. It's not like Americans created slavery. They also have a very little understanding of actually. You look at the numbers of the 10 million or so Africans in the slave trade. At least the ones who survived, unfortunately, the vast majority of them went to Cuba and Brazil. Right. Literally, we got 400,000 slaves, and of course, the population increased from just the normal population growth and etc. But people, their view, they think it's all just like this, white people. It's the whole issue. It's all America. It's a very unfortunate thing because there's a lot of important things to realize from slavery. I'm not saying it wasn't a significant issue in American history, but it's all related to politics now. It's all tied in because the whole critical race theory, 1619 project, when it really comes down to it, it's just a giant Trojan horse for socialism.
Sure.
That's really what it is.
I agree fully. It's like, look, I can admit slavery was a bad thing, dude. Like owning people is shit. It is absolutely terrible. Yeah. It should never be done. It was being done. not just by the U.S., the entire fucking world. Egypt, I mean, everywhere. This was common practice. In fact, the United States, I believe, was the first country to ban it. They were the first. We were the first one, really, right? Or was it England?
Well, so we banned ours. By the time we got to Brazil, was really, I think, one of the only major countries that was left. Britain really started the movement in the early 1830s. Okay. With its gradual emancipation program in the West Indies. But there were many. One of the consequences of the American Revolution that I actually talk about was it led to a weakening of slavery in the country. Right. A lot of northern states got rid of slavery, and even some southern states relaxed laws and freed slaves, and so on. And this is a huge impetus. But around the world, slavery had existed. It was not just uniquely American phenomenon. It was not a uniquely white phenomenon. Right. At all. And this is it's something that's it's very aggravating to get through, but it's all just related to, it all makes sense once you realize it's just another way of getting socialism in the door. Sure. You can't do it through the economic reasons anymore, so you have to go through the cultural Marxist route. And that's really been the strategy for a long time, and it's just been picking up speed. Yeah. You could say over the past decade or so.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people on the show to talk about critical race theory. I'm obviously anti-critical race theory. I think it's teaching people to hate themselves for things they didn't have a part in. So I'm not a big fan. I'm totally fine with teaching history the way it should be taught, telling the truth. And, I'm perfectly happy with the slave era being taught in schools. I mean, it happened. It's part of our history. Absolutely. But I don't think that we need to teach people to be to think they're bad people just because of the color of their skin. And I think CRT, a lot of the materials I've seen for CRT, that's what they do. I mean, that's really what it is. It's trying to make people feel bad for things they had nothing to do with. We got some super chats, Patrick, so I want to address some of these. They got some good questions here. Level Zero.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Level Zero, $5 super chat. Thanks, man. He said, he picked up your book this past weekend. What's the best way to expose cronyism going forward if it's in every single bill?
Well, the best way in terms of for the present is to, one, I mean, we were talking about this. We have social media. There's one of the benefits of the internet is, even though people don't educate themselves, it's a great way of exposing material, right? And actually, getting the message out there. So to continually mention the various crony aspects of law, to look back on prior laws once enough of the money trail becomes available and you can see who benefits and who doesn't, and really just try and get the word out there. In terms of fighting cronyism in the present day, as someone who's researched a tremendous amount on this, we're not going to reform Washington. That's just, right. I understand the benefits of having presidential candidates and whatever, if you want the Libertarian Party candidate, I totally get that. There are many benefits from that, but to assume one person is going to be able to go to Washington and reform it just isn't going to happen. As much as I would be willing, to chop off my hand to still see Ron Paul, even though I want to say he's like 86 now, be president, I would still do it. I'd say, all right, just give me the knife, right? But it's not going to reform. It's not going to change the system. Really, the best way to kind of combat it is through things, various forms of nullification, secession, etc., to really just try and remove the government power from the federal level to the state and local levels. You're still going to have cronyism there, but it's relatively more manageable. One of the benefits of, I think, the lockdowns, one of the few benefits, et cetera, and all the mask policies is it has gotten a lot more people acceptable to those ideas, or thinking more in terms of their state level rather than their federal level regarding different mask policies, vaccine requirements, and so on. And this is kind of a continuation of, let's say, the drug legalization that's been going on in the country. It's been a state level thing. So really, the main thing is just continually education, continually teaching people, trying to show how their lives are adversely affected by it, and trying to bring more policies back to an area of politics people are a little bit closer to and they can control more.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with the COVID thing. I mean, I haven't heard this many people talking about state policies ever in my entire life, man. I think the housing market bubble was the last time I heard people talking about like different state policies and stuff. And that was, what was that, 2008 or something? It's been a long time now. So I mean, but this is on a whole nother scale. I mean, you have people all over the country talking about the different policies. They're talking about moving to different states to get different policies. And it's like, wow, I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk like that before, ever in my entire life. And I'm almost 40. So.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's great. I think over the past 5 years, you've seen actually just around the world a tremendous promotion for secession in various forms. You saw Catalonia, you saw Kurdistan, you saw Brexit, which was kind of successful. Then you're starting to see it more in America, and that's a good thing, I think, because a lot of people are getting fed up, and things are becoming more local, and that's just getting more people awake, especially when it's local gut issues, national debt, monetary policy, that's boring. Face masks, school closures, vaccines, that really hits home. Everyone can, they can see how that affects their lives.
Sure. Yeah. Most people, I mean, let's be honest, unless you're like paying attention to economics, most people in this country don't give a shit about monetary policy whatsoever. Yeah. They don't care. That's why, the End the Fed movement was really big. But it was never as big as it should have been. If anybody, if you understand the Federal Reserve at all, you're like, this is a terrible institution that needs to go. So the fact that wasn't the biggest movement in the country says a lot. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's pretty wild, man. We got some more super chats here. Let's check it out. What's up, John Howe? Thanks a lot, man. $5 super chat. He's running for Congress against AOC in New York, by the way. So everyone go check out John Howe. He said, you cannot be a legal business without becoming a government entity. The rest of the problem stems from there. It is not a market at all. I agree. Yeah. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, this is actually something I teach to my students. Part of a lot of cronyism that happens in the world is in some sense defensive lobbying, because you're lobbying to basically try and allow the government to get the government to allow you to do something, either to lower your tax burden or to not use a hostile regulation or antitrust lawsuit against you. So businesses, they're always playing the offense and the defense, either trying to secure their own privileges or trying to prevent their competitors from securing privileges. There's an old saying in Washington. It goes something like this. It's that if you're not ordering at the dinner table, you're on the menu. Okay. Right. And that's true. It's kill or be killed. And it's a vicious system, which is why you can't really reform the system. Like I was saying, we had the greatest chance of reforming the system, as I explained in my book, was, during the Jeffersonian and the Jacksonian eras. If they couldn't do it, so much for us. The only way we can kind of do it is just to sort of break away almost. So to try and, like I said, move more to the state and local level. Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big fan of secession, man. I hope one of these days Texas just does it. You know what I mean? It would be so beautiful to see it happen. Everybody's like, oh, they can't survive without the federal government. Yeah, okay. Like no one needs the federal government. Half the reason why their power grid went down is because of the federal government. By the way, a lot of people don't understand that. So
it was deregulation, right?
Yeah. And they would have been a lot better had they not had the federal government fucking with their power grid when they had that freeze, man. I'll tell you that much. Let's see. Ben Heckman, what's up, brother? Thanks for the $5 super chat. He says, is it worth making a distinction between freed markets and capitalism as concepts, as many left libertarians do?
Freed markets?
Yeah, free. So I know there's some distinction between freed markets and free markets. And I know that leftists talk a lot about it's like left libertarians. So like, mutualists, people who've subscribed to like Proudhon and stuff like that. I know that they talk a lot about freed markets. Are you familiar with the distinction between freed and free markets at all?
No, I'm actually not. I mean, I know of left. I don't. Well, all these will just say I don't. I think it's really important to make that distinction. I think anything that would just be confusing. That's why even mentioning like capitalism, crony capitalism. That's why you just stick with cronyism. But I don't know, is there a particular, I would just say no, you stick with free markets. It's anything freed market. That's like I said, I'm a big fan. When I message, it's really important that, for a lot, especially, people who are autists, like Austrian economics people,
we don't really think about who we're messaging to all the time. We're just like,
Yeah.
listen, I read this book, and I'm going to tell you all about this book that I read, and this is how it needs to be. And so when when Larry sat me down and was like, hey, just fucking call them consumer driven markets, dude. Trust me, these lefties, they listen to it, they'll have a better conversation with you. It really did make a difference, man. Just that little tweak in my language. And so I started looking at other things, and now since I do actually work in national politics, and I'm not just a theory guy, right? There's real world policy that we're trying to affect, and when I work with the Mises Caucus, we worked on the decrim Denver stuff to get mushrooms decrimmed there, and then they worked on gun policy in Texas, and so there's real policy we're working on, and I had to start really thinking about how to message to people where they are, and I think that's a really important thing. And I always have my my North Star is Murray, and now I read a lot of Hoppe, and I've been really getting into Hoppe stuff. And but I have to still message to people where they're at, and I think there is some good in making distinctions, but also thinking about the language you're using when you're messaging to certain people is important if we want to change hearts and minds, man, for sure. But on Twitter, I'm an edgelord, and that's it. That's all you get.
Yeah, I get. So I definitely understand the importance of marketing, and so if you're trying to appeal to certain people, explain it that way. I guess the thing I would always say is at least in the abstract as your core, you don't want to get muddled too much in those terms,
Sure.
right? Or start to always just all right. You're kind of just engaging in a marketing message, right? If you say that and you recognize that, then yeah, we used to do that all the time in the past, and that's how you get things done. You're trying to appeal to people how it affects people, and all of that. Like we used to portray the Bank of the United States as this hydra with all of its tentacles corrupting it. I'm like, that's a great that's fantastic, right? Might not be the best way to describe it in theoretical terms, but that's one way to get people interested in a central bank. So okay, and something like that, I guess maybe I was just thinking, of course, me as you've heard, I'm stuck on all my books in my ivory tower over here.
Same.
Yeah. Then
I got a little stack.
I
got a little stack over here.
Yeah, in terms of the theoretical, position, I would say I don't think you need to do that. But if for marketing people, absolutely.
Sure.
You do what you need. You got to do what you got to do in order to communicate to people the libertarian message in whatever issue you're trying to apply it to. If you're trying to apply to leftists, you're trying to apply to people on the right, etc. Drugs, guns, you need the marketing. Yeah, is crucial. So for that case, yeah.
I'm really into trying to figure out how to message Austrian economics to normies. I think it's so extremely hard. And that's one of the reasons I'm really excited for Per Byland's book to come out. It's kind of like a condensed breakdown version for normies. And I think that'll be really cool. I'm pretty stoked about that. Shannon Lee, thanks for the $5 super chat. She says, sounds like a great read. So with researching historical events, how true, consistent were the facts you found to what was actually in school texts?
Ooh, not the school does not hold up well, basically. Just when you learn, actually, in terms of public interest, that wasn't true. Or so, for example, let's go through why is the Capitol where it is, right? So why is Washington D.C. where it is? Well, if you know your American history, you're going to know that there was this issue over debt. It was the United States government where we're going to assume all this old Revolutionary War debt. The North and the South compromised, so they put the Capitol in the middle, basically on the Potomac River. As to why it's actually where it is in its particular place, a lot of people don't know this, but during the battle over the bank bill, Washington was actually going to veto the central bank bill. The issue was he was given the power to choose the location of the nation's capital, and he was allowed to choose it within certain boundaries, but he wanted to put it outside of those boundaries, close to all of his property near Alexandria. So he signed the bank bill in return for the Federalists allowing him to put the capital near all of his land, right? You never hear about that at all
Right.
in American history. You never hear about, oh, why is Washington, D.C. where it is? It's because Washington wanted to, make a little bit of money. And of course, anyone who's been to Washington, D.C., they still have Mount Vernon, his estate. He's got this massive highway that's basically taking up all this land. Like, it's incredible. He's still, the Washington, the land, he's still making a killing off of that.
Especially for how packed DC is, and then they still have all that land in one. You know what I mean? It's pretty wild, man.
Yeah, you literally, you've got this huge plantation, then you've got this huge highway, and you're just thinking, you're like, well, how much do we need to deify this man? Like, I'm not like, saying we need to rip down the statues, but I'm just like, at least provide some relief to the landowner, to the tenants, and that's it. But so there's something like that. There's plenty of examples of this in American history. You learn that actually, a famous Supreme Court justice, Chief Justice John Marshall. Well, one thing I learned in my history was that he was an enormous land speculator, and he got the government to provide various land speculation grants. And his younger brother, James, had married the daughter of the richest financier in the country. Imagine that. You're Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in 2021, and your younger brother is basically married like Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or something.
Yeah.
You might think that would influence some of his policies, right? But of course, that's not discussed at all in the history books. You're just always supposed to assume these people are public interested servants, etc. They never dip their hand in the till.
Right.
And yeah, there's plenty of examples. So high school, the history you learned in high school or college, etc. There's a lot more complicated. The politicians do not come out as good as they are portrayed.
Right. Well, and that kind of goes back to your absolute power corrupts absolutely, the quote you used for your book. I mean, they can have I'm sure a lot of politicians get into politics with the best of intentions. I'm sure they do. But then once you find out that you can become a multi-millionaire by being in government, and they do. Look at the House. You know what I mean? Look at the Senate. I mean, these people, they go in. AOC went into politics a bartender, and she's definitely a millionaire now. There's no doubt about it. I did not a doubt in my mind. She's worth well over $1 million, and that's not just from her $189,000 a year salary that she gets. I mean, she's really people are paying her for all kinds of stuff, and so then it starts to become about people are always talking about how government exists to help people. And it's like they're still just individuals, man. And they still have their own personal interests at heart. And they're going to do whatever they can to continue to line their pockets. And that's what they're doing. And that's what they're going to continue to do as long as we let them continue to do it. Really. I mean, that's what it is.
Absolutely.
Outlaw Barber, thanks for the $5 super chat. He said, August Belmont was the biggest war bond seller for the North and South, financing the Civil War. He was a family friend of the Rothschild family. Anything you found in your history text? I don't think there was a question.
So I don't cover that era. I will say, yeah. So August Belmont, he was a prominent banker for the Democratic Party. He was actually the national treasurer of the Democratic Party in the 1850s and the 1860s. His son, August Belmont Jr., would also do stuff related to the Democratic Party. In terms of selling government debt in the Civil War, that was actually for the Union, that was Jay Cook. A very prominent investment banker of Cook & Co., a Philadelphia investment bank firm. He was involved in marketing a massive amount of government debt. And aside from making money on that, why was he doing that? Well, because he was also promoting the national banking system, that quasi-central banking system that Lincoln passed. In order to basically run a bank, you had to keep government debt as part of basically as one of your assets you had to hold. So of course he's promoting all these banks, right? I mean, he's pushing for this banking law because it's going to increase the demand for all the bonds he's trying to sell, right? And so he can make more money off of it. So yeah, Belmont was the Democratic Party. He wasn't so big in terms of Civil War financing because the Democratic Party was weak. That was really Jay Cook. When Jay Cook failed, in the Panic of 1873, that's when J.P. Morgan took over, right? The very prominent investment banker that many people. He's a bad guy. But so that's my banking history. I could go into all about the powerful bankers, throughout the history. That's a whole nother book, one that I'm writing now. But anyway, that's my extraneous knowledge I have for today.
Nice. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of this public stream, but before we go. Recently, there's Tho Bishop, who I love Tho. I know people can be as mad at me as they want. I've had Tho on the show. I talk to Tho a lot. He's great, and he definitely meant to trigger some people by posting. Basically, all he did was post Murray Rothbard's words. I mean, that's really what he did. And I can't remember what section it was, 5 or something. He said. Where will, talking about the homeless and the bums and vagrants, and where will they go? Who cares? Hopefully, become more productive members of society. Where do you have you been watching this debate unfold on Twitter between Liberty Twitter people?
I've seen a little bit of it. I mean, I know the article, actually the article Tho is referencing that Rothbard wrote in the early 90s. And yeah, you got to imagine, obviously Rothbard's writing it. This was in his later years, and you might think he's probably cackling now. People are still reading his works and still being triggered by it. I'm sure he was hoping to infuriate some people there. In terms of the homeless issue, obviously I'm not here to, I don't think Rothbard was going to criticize, homeless people. They've certainly had a tough break, but there is an issue that Rothbard in many ways is being very prescient. He was able to look into the future as someone who lives in a city, also someone who's been to California and other places. There is an enormous homeless problem, and this is becoming an issue because you're just simply allowing more and more people to live on the streets. And of course, when you're encouraging that, you need to, or basically if you encourage that, you're going to get more of the problem, right? And this is an issue. It deals with like human waste. It deals with littering. There's sometimes places I don't want to walk my dog nearby simply because I know homeless people were there the night before and they've left like chicken wings out and stuff. I don't want my dog chewing on that. I mean, that's so, part of it is the streets, they're not necessarily public property. You got to privatize them. But you also have to have some sort of semblance of law and order on that. I'm not advocating increased government intervention. I'm just saying certain things have to be regulated in a way. For me, solving the homeless problem, well, that's getting rid of things like minimum wage, the welfare state, the war on drugs, and so on. But absolutely, you do need to privatize the streets and kick them off, or have some sort of mechanism for avoiding. You cannot encourage homelessness. That's simply not the way to solving it.
Well, it's funny because the worst homeless issues are in cities that have the most resources for homeless people. I mean, we're talking San Francisco, New York City, Portland, Oregon. I mean, these places are terrible. And I've lived in both Portland, Oregon, and San Francisco. I haven't spent any significant time in New York, but I'm watching this argument unfurl, right? And I'm in my head, I'm thinking there's literally a fucking app on Google called Poo Maps. Where you can map out all of the shits on the street in San Francisco, and I'm telling you, the whole city lights up brown when you look at this app, right? And I'm from there. I'm from that area. I grew up 30 minutes outside of San Francisco. I went there every weekend for a long time. I've worked in the city for a long time, and it's a real problem. I mean, the crime rate has skyrocketed with the homeless issue because there's a lot of stabbings and attacks and rapes and there are homeless people doing this. They're shitting in people's business doorways, all over the streets. There's heroin needles everywhere. I mean, literally, if you walk down any street, especially around Market Street, close to Embarcadero, or if you go down to Hunters Point, or if you go down to the Tenderloin or Mission, I mean, there, you can't walk more than 20 feet without seeing heroin needles. I mean, they're everywhere. It's a problem. So I get the sentiment, right? Like, I understand because I grew up in a place that's, has this issue. And then I moved to Portland, Oregon, and I actually wrote a paper in college about the homeless crisis in Portland. And what I did was I parked my car and I actually went down and lived on the street in downtown Portland for a weekend. And within 6 hours, I was eating at a shelter. I had a new jacket. They were talking about moving me into transitional housing. I mean, that was within one weekend. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And still yet the problem persists and grows and gets bigger every day in these cities that they have these resources in. Right. And so, like I said, I understand both sides. I understand the libertarian argument is, we don't want to unleash the cops on people at all. That's not what we want to do. But I also understand the people that are fed up with having to deal with it, that live in the big cities. And I'm happy to live in a place that's too cold for any of that shit now. Like there's 5 homeless people in Iowa. That's it. You can't survive here on the street. It's too damn cold. But it is an issue, and it's crazy to see the fracture and divide in the liberty movement over this one issue like that quickly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it deals with, in terms of compassion.
Sure.
Obviously, the way Rothbard is writing it, he's writing in a way where it's looking like, okay, the homeless people. Again, he's writing a political column, but it's in a sense is, oh, what are we going to do about them? Well, it's like, well, also you can let them work for themselves, provide them the right incentive structure, but it's like I shouldn't have to care about homeless people. I shouldn't have to care about someone else. I shouldn't have to care about you, right? Obviously, you do if you got a bond, but there's an old saying by Charles Maclay. He was, I think that's how you pronounce the last name, very prominent British libertarian in the 1890s. Said this country has as many, this country can have as many paupers as it chooses to pay for.
Right.
Okay? And it's true. The more you subsidize homelessness, the more you're going to get this problem. And then that's going to encourage people to want to use the cops to unleash, and that in many ways can make the problem worse if it increases, animosity or it leads to other issues. But yeah, I mean, the problem is we're simply subsidizing too many homeless people with the policies that are in place. We are encouraging homelessness, and it's becoming more and more of a problem. People are getting fed up, and they're trying to leave. They're trying to move out. They're trying to get away from it. It's becoming that bad, basically.
Yeah, I had to leave. I had to leave the city, man. I did, and I'm happy. I'm happy to do it. It's the cost of living's 1/5 what it was for me before, and my salary's on par with what I was making in California. So how can I complain? All I got to do is pay for it through the winter. I mean, that's really, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
But okay, so we're at the end of this thing, man. But before we go, 2 things. One, have you done any work for the Ron Paul curriculum?
No, I have not.
That would be good. That would be a good. Maybe we could get some history stuff going on over there.
Yeah, I'd love to. I know I've done some consulting for Tuttle Twins.
Oh, nice.
They're working on a book on history, so I've been on calls with them all the time because they're like, how did the Revolutionary War debt work? And there's a very small list of people who have that knowledge, and it's like, well, yeah, okay, there I am. Right?
Yeah. Well,
So,
I have.
yeah, so
we have all of the Tuttle Twins books here. I'm a big fan of Connor, and my kids read them, man. So we look forward to your Tuttle Twins book coming out soon.
Oh well, they've read it, but I mentioned I've got the structure. I told So the maybe I'll be there in the little cartoon. Who knows?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great, man. And the other thing, how many people have told you that you sound like Murray Rothbard when you talk?
Everyone. If I had a quarter for every time people told that to me, I'd be able to buy a Bitcoin. I don't know.
It's pretty cool that you translated his writings and you kind of sound like him too. I mean, he obviously got like this nervous. I love watching Murray Rothbard's old talks, man, because he get that nervous giggle, and he didn't really look at the crowd very much, and he was.
Yeah.
I love Murray, man. He's great.
Yeah. Oh, so many people have told that to me. I've always have a bunch of old people, and I would talk at Mises events and other places, and they'd say it was a Pork Fest too, and Freedom Fest. They'd say, when I close my eyes and you sound just like Murray, right? When I listen to him, so I'm like, oh, thanks, yeah. But I love his cackle, his classic. I mean, I'm from a similar area, so New Jersey, crop, very similar, background to Rothbard, similar ethnic background, etc. And so people have told that to me, and of course I love it. So I really do not intentionally try and do it. This is just how I talk.
It's just how you talk, dude. And that's great. I think he's a little bit more higher pitched than you for sure. Yeah. But man, it is uncanny how much you sound like him, dude. I think it was in the Bob Murphy interview with you that I was listening to, and Bob brought it up, and I was like, holy shit, it really does. He does sound like Rothbard. That's fucking cool, man. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, I'm a big fan. I'm glad that Tho talked to me about having you on, man. I look forward to reading your book. Where can my subscribers follow you, support you, listen to you, all that great stuff?
You can follow me on Twitter, just at Dr. Patrick Newman, and you can also buy the book on Amazon. Just Cronyism, type in Patrick Newman, etc. if you read the book, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can shoot me an email, Twitter, leave a review on Amazon, etc. But anyway, you can follow me. That's all my social media information.
Awesome, Patrick. Yeah, guys, the book is Cronyism, Liberty versus Power in America, 1607 to 1849. Definitely buy the book. Definitely check it out. I'm looking at it on Amazon right now because I'm getting ready to buy it myself. Dr. Patrick Newman, thank you so much for coming on, man. If you can give me like 5 minutes to close out this show, I'll get the members only stream started.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Thanks again for coming on, brother. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
All right, guys, another awesome episode of Break the Cycle. Patrick's super cool. Please go buy his book. Definitely check out the fifth edition of Conceived in Liberty that he was able to translate for all of us who should be thanking the guy repeatedly. And buy his book and check him out. Follow him on Twitter at Dr. Patrick Newman. He's a really cool guy, and he should have a lot more visibility than he has on Twitter. So you guys, all my Twitter followers, I went from 20,000 followers to 3,600 overnight, man. So I'm trying to build mine back. But if you're still following me, go check out Dr. Patrick Newman on Twitter. Guys, please go check out my sponsors, toplobster.com, the man, the myth, the legend, my good friend and partner on Break the Cycle, where you can get this great Ron Paul. It didn't have to be this way hoodie that you see me wearing tonight by using BTC at checkout for a 10% discount. Or you guys can join the Patreon and subscribe. Patreon or the Subscribe Star if you guys don't like Patreon. I know a lot of people don't. Both of those are / Break the Cycle JS on both platforms. Or you can join the YouTube channel under all of my videos by hitting join. I think it's $5.99 a month or $4.99 a month. You get into the private Discord server on all three of those platforms where you can get all of Top Lobster's new gear up to 2 weeks before it goes to the general public at like a 30% discount. And he's even got really, really cool Christmas sweaters right now. So if you want an ugly Christmas sweater, go check it out. And also, you guys get all of the members only streams on all three of those platforms. The only thing is if you do Patreon or Subscribe Star, they get uploaded there the next day or the day after. And if you do the YouTube subscription, you get to watch them live. But it really just depends on your preferences. You get other swag over at Patreon and Subscribe Star as well. And also check out our executive producers of the show, anthemplanning.com, for all your emergency and crisis planning needs. Check them out today. See what they can do for your business, home, or personal life. They're doing a wonderful job that the government has historically sucked at, much cheaper and much more efficiently. Seriously, if you own a business, go check them out right after the show's ending, unless you guys are going to come hang out in the members only stream. Guys, I got one more show this week. Tomorrow night, I'm going to have Citizen Hush on, everyone's favorite trap star. I'm very excited for that show. The guy's hilarious. It's gonna be fun. And then of course I'm going to Boston on Wednesday. I'll be home Monday, and we will have a show again after that the following Tuesday. So a couple of days off. I'll miss y'all. Come hang out with us in the members only stream by becoming a member on the YouTube channel now. I'll see you tomorrow for the show with Citizen Hush. Sorry, throat was getting really dry. But until then, don't forget to break the cycle.
Have to explain the lyrics of my last song may seem to contain a violent call to action in the verse and refrain, but I just landed in Minecraft. The helicopter part was in reference to GTA 5 and the things you do. So any violence you commit, I am not an excuse, because I just landed in Minecraft. A chipper is my friend and he's constantly cold. Accusations of incitement getting totally old. Make your own choices, yeah, you have control, because I just landed in Minecraft. Obviously I would never advocate force unless there's due process and a trial, of course. And if you're convicted, we will make you a corpse in Minecraft, just in Minecraft. You're nothing I mean, you know it. No product theaters, cause they closed for COVID. Holy shit, I think I'm pro.